All right, let's dive right in. We're talking about one of the most chaotic, bloody, and important events in all of history, the French Revolution. This is the story of how an entire country, in just a few short years, went from a centuries-old monarchy to something completely new, and in the process, really did change the world forever. But how does that even happen? Seriously, think about it. How do you go from a king who is the absolute ruler of everything to a period of bloody terror that consumes even its own leaders? That's the huge, dramatic question we're going to unpack today.
Because, explosions like this don't just come out of nowhere. To really get it, you have to understand the pressure that was building up. Pre-revolutionary France wasn't just in a bit of trouble. It was a total powder keg, just waiting for a spark.
So what was pushing France right to the edge? Well, it was basically a perfect storm of three major things. Some radical new ideas floating around, a government that was completely broke, and a social system that was just deeply, deeply unfair.
First up, the intellectual fuel. You had these incredible thinkers, Voltaire, Rousseau, you've heard the names, who were part of this movement called the Enlightenment. They were pushing these revolutionary ideas about reason, liberty, and equality for all. Plus, everyone had just watched the American Revolution succeed. So now these weren't just abstract ideas, people could see them working in the real world.
And then there was the money problem. Or, more accurately, the total lack of money. King Louis XVI's government was basically drowning in debt. We're talking expensive wars and a royal lifestyle that was unbelievably lavish. At the exact same time, a series of bad harvests meant that regular people were literally starving. It was the worst of both worlds.
And that brings us right to the heart of the problem. This system called the Three Estates. It's how French society was structured, and as you can see from this chart, it is wildly out of balance. 97% of the entire population belonged to just one group, the Third Estate.
And this table right here, this shows you the insane injustice of it all. The first two estates, the clergy and the nobility, they were a tiny 3% of the population, but they held all the power, all the wealth, and paid zero taxes. Meanwhile, the Third Estate, which is literally everyone else, had 97% of the people, absolutely no political power, and had to pay all of the taxes. It was an unsustainable system, and it was about to break.
And nothing symbolized the disconnect more than this famous line. Now, Queen Marie Antoinette almost certainly never said, "Let them eat cake." But it doesn't matter. The fact that people believe she could say something so out of touch tells you everything you need to know about how the monarchy was seen. It was the ultimate symbol of their indifference.
So, the country is broke, the people are angry, and the king is out of options. So Louis XVI does something that hadn't been done in 175 years. He calls a big meeting of all three estates. And right here, this is the moment the pressure cooker finally explodes.
And in 1789, things just moved at lightning speed. In May, the big meeting happens, but it goes nowhere. By June, the Third Estate gets fed up, declares itself the real government, the National Assembly, and they swear an oath on a tennis court not to quit until they've written a constitution. And then, on July 14th, the people of Paris stormed the Bastille prison, a hated symbol of royal power. The revolution was on.
And listen to this quote. It just perfectly captures the new attitude. "We are here by the will of the people and will only go out by the force of bayonets." This is a representative of the Third Estate basically saying, we're not your subjects anymore. We speak for the nation now, and you'll have to kill us to make us leave. Incredible.
Once the Bastille fell, there was no going back. The genie was out of the bottle. Now the National Assembly had this huge, almost impossible task ahead of them, to completely tear down the old world and build a brand new nation from scratch.
And just look at this comparison. It shows you how radical this change was. Everything was being flipped on its head. Power didn't come from a king anymore. It came from the nation. People weren't subjects. They were citizens with actual rights. The whole idea of a king chosen by God? Gone, replaced by a declaration of the rights of man. This was a total rewrite of the rules of society. And here's a little fun fact for you. You know the political terms we use all the time, left-wing and right-wing? They were literally invented here. It all came from where people sat in the new assembly hall. The radicals who wanted to get rid of the king sat on the left, and the conservatives who wanted to keep him sat on the right. That's it.
Of course, the king wasn't just going to let this happen. In 1791, he and the family tried to escape the country in disguise, but they were caught. That was the last straw for many people. Trust was completely shattered. When other countries threatened to invade, France declared war. Fearing a counter-revolution, Parisians stormed the royal palace and finally the monarchy was officially abolished. King Louis XVI was put on trial for treason, found guilty, and executed.
So the king is gone, but now France is at war with most of Europe. And this is when things take a really dark turn. The revolution enters its most extreme, paranoid, and violent phase, the infamous Reign of Terror.
And the numbers are just staggering. In a little over a year, a small group of radicals led by a man named Maximilien Robespierre executed around 40,000 people. Anyone suspected of being an enemy of the revolution could be sent to their death, all in the name of protecting liberty.
And the symbol of this whole period became this machine, the guillotine. The terrible irony is that it was originally promoted as a more humane, enlightened way to execute people. But its brutal efficiency is what made the industrial-scale killing of the Terror possible.
The paranoia just spiraled out of control. The revolution truly began to devour its own. Even famous revolutionary leaders who suggested maybe it was time to dial back the terror were themselves arrested and sent to the guillotine. The madness only came to an end when Robespierre, the man behind it all, was finally overthrown and executed himself.
Okay, so after all that bloodshed, France was just exhausted. People were tired of the chaos and instability. The country was desperate for a strong leader to come in and restore order. And right on cue, a brilliant and incredibly ambitious young general was about to step onto the stage.
The government that took over after the Terror was weak and corrupt. So this young general, Napoleon Bonaparte, who was already a national hero for his military wins, saw his chance. In 1799, he staged a coup and seized power. And honestly, people were relieved. He brought stability back, he fixed the economy. But then, in 1804, in a wild turn of events, Napoleon crowned himself emperor, bringing the French Republic to an end.
So you might be thinking, wait a minute, they overthrew a king just to end up with an emperor? Was it all for nothing? And the answer is a definite no. Because even though the Republic failed, the ideas of the revolution could never be erased.
And it all comes down to these three words: liberté, égalité, fraternité. Liberty, equality, brotherhood. This was the heart and soul of the revolution. And even with all the terror and the rise of Napoleon, these words became a rallying cry that would echo across the globe for the next 200 years, inspiring countless other fights for freedom and human rights.
Which leaves us with this final thought. It's an incredible paradox, isn't it? A decade of chaos that starts with a fight for rights, descends into a bloodbath, and ends with a dictator. And yet, the core ideas that came out of that fire, liberty, equality, the rights of the citizen, went on to completely reshape our modern world. How did that happen? Well, that is the complicated, messy, and enduring legacy of the French Revolution.